Question 1. What factors determine the appropriate data retention policies for call recordings and customer interaction logs within a Unified Communications Contact Center Express UCCX implementation, specifically adhering to the regulatory framework for the United States? Option A. The personal preferences of the contact center management regarding how long data should be kept for their convenience. Option B. The default retention periods configured within the UCCX software, assuming these are universally compliant with all U.S. legal mandates. Option C. The storage capacity available on the UCCX servers, prioritizing keeping as much data as possible until storage is full. Option D. The specific requirements outlined by relevant U.S. federal and state laws governing data privacy, record keeping, and industry-specific regulations, e.g. HIPAA for healthcare, PCI DSS for payment card industry, alongside the business's defined need for historical data for quality assurance, training, and dispute resolution. Correct answer is D. The specific requirements outlined by relevant U.S. federal and state laws governing data privacy, record keeping, and industry-specific regulations, e.g. HIPAA for healthcare, PCI DSS for payment card industry, alongside the business's defined need for historical data for quality assurance, training, and dispute resolution. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because implementing a Unified Communications Contact Center Express UCCX solution involves handling sensitive customer data and ensuring compliance with various regulations. The primary challenge lies in balancing the technical requirements of UCCX implementation with the legal and ethical obligations to protect customer privacy and data security. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the system is configured and operated in a manner that adheres to all applicable laws and guidelines, preventing potential breaches, fines, and reputational damage. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough understanding and adherence to the specific regulatory framework governing data privacy and telecommunications in the relevant jurisdiction. This involves proactively identifying all applicable laws, such as those related to customer data handling, call recording, and data retention, and integrating these requirements into the UCCX design and implementation phases. This ensures that the solution is built with compliance as a foundational element, rather than an afterthought. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of non-compliance and demonstrates a commitment to ethical data stewardship. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on technical functionality without considering regulatory implications is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for legal obligations, potentially leading to violations of data privacy laws, such as those mandating consent for data collection or dictating data retention periods. Another incorrect approach that involves implementing security measures without understanding the specific data types being handled or the regulatory requirements for their protection is also flawed. This can result in either over-engineering security, leading to unnecessary costs and complexity, or under-engineering it, leaving sensitive data vulnerable to breaches. A third incorrect approach that relies on generic best practices without verifying their alignment with the specific jurisdiction's laws is a significant ethical and regulatory failure. Generic practices may not cover all local nuances, leading to inadvertent noncompliance. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a comprehensive regulatory assessment. This involves identifying all relevant laws and guidelines pertaining to contact center operations and customer data within the specific jurisdiction. Subsequently, these requirements must be translated into technical and operational specifications for the UCCX implementation. Regular audits and reviews throughout the implementation and operational phases are crucial to ensure ongoing compliance. Finally, maintaining clear documentation of compliance efforts and having a process for addressing regulatory changes are essential components of responsible UCCX deployment. Question 2. When evaluating the implementation of Cisco Unified Communications Contact Center Express UCCX, which approach to risk assessment best aligns with professional best practices and regulatory considerations for protecting sensitive customer data and ensuring system integrity? Option A. Focus risk assessment exclusively on the core UCCX software, disregarding potential risks introduced by third-party integrations or custom development. Option B. Implement only the most basic security features that are part of the default UCCX configuration, assuming these are sufficient for all environments. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that identifies, analyzes, and prioritizes threats and vulnerabilities specific to the UCCX environment and its data, leading to tailored mitigation strategies. Option D. Prioritize risk mitigation efforts based solely on the immediate cost savings achievable by implementing the least expensive security measures. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that identifies, analyzes, and prioritizes threats and vulnerabilities specific to the UCCX environment and its data, leading to tailored mitigation strategies. Explanation. Scenario analysis. Implementing Cisco Unified Communications Contact Center Express UCCX involves integrating a complex communication system that handles sensitive customer data and critical business operations. A professionally challenging aspect of risk assessment in this context is balancing the need for robust security and compliance with the operational requirements of a contact center, which often demands high availability and rapid response times. Failure to adequately assess and mitigate risks can lead to service disruptions, data breaches, reputational damage, and noncompliance with relevant regulations. The dynamic nature of cyber threats and evolving business needs necessitates a continuous and thorough risk assessment process. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and comprehensive risk assessment that identifies potential threats and vulnerabilities specific to the UCCX environment, analyzes their potential impact, and prioritizes mitigation strategies. This aligns with best professional practices for IT security and compliance. For UCCX implementations, this would include assessing risks related to data privacy, e.g., PCI DSS if applicable, system availability, integrity of call recordings, unauthorized access, and potential denial of service attacks. A proactive approach, involving regular reviews and updates to the risk assessment, ensures that the implemented security controls remain effective and that the organization can adapt to new threats. This methodical process is crucial for maintaining operational resilience and meeting regulatory obligations, such as those that might be implied by general data protection principles or industry-specific security standards, even without explicit mention of a specific U.S. regulation in the prompt. Incorrect approaches analysis. Focusing solely on immediate cost savings without a thorough risk assessment is professionally unacceptable because it prioritizes financial expediency over security and compliance. This can lead to under-resourcing critical security controls, leaving the UCCX system vulnerable to attacks or data breaches, which would ultimately incur higher costs in remediation and potential fines. Implementing only the most basic security features mandated by default configurations without a tailored risk assessment is also professionally flawed. Default configurations are often designed for broad applicability and may not address the specific threat landscape or compliance requirements of a particular organization. This approach fails to proactively identify and mitigate unique risks, potentially leaving gaps in security that attackers can exploit. Ignoring potential risks associated with third-party integrations or customizations is a significant ethical and professional failure. UCCX often interacts with other systems, e.g., CRM databases, and vulnerabilities in these integrations can become entry points for attackers. A comprehensive risk assessment must consider the entire ecosystem of the UCCX deployment, not just the core product. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to UCCX implementation and ongoing management. This involves 1. Identification, systematically identifying all potential threats and vulnerabilities relevant to the UCCX environment and its data. 2. Analysis, evaluating the likelihood and potential impact of each identified risk. 3. Prioritization, ranking risks based on their severity to focus mitigation efforts on the most critical issues. 4. Mitigation, developing and implementing strategies to reduce or eliminate identified risks. 5. Monitoring and review, continuously monitoring the effectiveness of controls and regularly reviewing and updating the risk assessment to account for changes in the threat landscape, technology, and business requirements. This iterative process ensures that security and compliance remain aligned with organizational objectives and regulatory expectations. Question 3. Operational review demonstrates that a new feature for Unified Communications Contact Center Express UCCX is ready for deployment, but the implementation team has not conducted a formal risk assessment beyond a brief discussion among senior engineers. The business is pushing for rapid deployment to meet competitive demands. Which approach best balances the need for timely implementation with robust risk management? Option A. Postpone the deployment until a comprehensive, documented risk assessment is completed, including identification of threats, analysis of likelihood and impact, and development of mitigation strategies. Option B. Proceed with the deployment immediately, as the senior engineers have extensive experience and have not identified any immediate critical risks. Option C. Conduct a quick, informal risk assessment focusing only on known, high-profile security vulnerabilities, assuming operational risks are minimal. Option D. Implement the new feature with a monitor and adapt strategy, addressing any issues that arise post-deployment as they occur. The correct answer is B. Proceed with the deployment immediately, as the senior engineers have extensive experience and have not identified any immediate critical risks. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT security and compliance, balancing operational efficiency with robust risk management. The pressure to quickly deploy new features, especially in a dynamic contact center environment like UCCX, can lead to shortcuts in the risk assessment process. The challenge lies in ensuring that the urgency of business needs does not compromise the thoroughness required to identify, analyze, and mitigate potential security and operational risks associated with system changes. Failure to do so can expose the organization to significant vulnerabilities, data breaches, and service disruptions, all of which have regulatory and financial implications. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that systematically identifies potential threats and vulnerabilities, analyzes their likelihood and impact, and prioritizes mitigation strategies. This aligns with best practices in IT governance and security frameworks, which are often implicitly or explicitly referenced in regulatory guidelines for system implementations. For UCCX, this means considering risks related to data privacy, e.g., customer call recordings, personally identifiable information, system availability, integration with other critical systems, and potential unauthorized access. A structured risk assessment ensures that all potential negative outcomes are considered before deployment, allowing for informed decisions on whether to proceed, implement controls, or defer the change. This proactive approach is fundamental to maintaining compliance with data protection regulations and ensuring business continuity. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to proceed with the deployment based solely on the perceived low likelihood of immediate issues. This fails to acknowledge that even low-probability events can have catastrophic impacts, and it bypasses the due diligence required to identify less obvious but significant risks. This approach is ethically questionable, as it prioritizes speed over the safety and security of customer data and system integrity. It also creates a regulatory risk by not demonstrating a commitment to a risk-based security posture, which is a common expectation in many compliance frameworks. Another incorrect approach is to rely on anecdotal evidence or the experience of a few senior engineers without a formal process. While experience is valuable, it is not a substitute for a structured risk assessment. This method is prone to bias and can overlook systemic risks that are not immediately apparent from individual experiences. It lacks the documentation and audit trail necessary to demonstrate compliance and can lead to inconsistent risk management practices across different projects. A third incorrect approach is to focus only on immediate, obvious security threats and neglect operational risks. For example, overlooking the potential impact of a new feature on system performance, scalability, or integration with existing infrastructure can lead to service degradation or outages, even if no direct security breach occurs. This narrow focus fails to provide a holistic view of risk, which is essential for the stable and reliable operation of a critical system like a contact center. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured, documented, and repeatable risk assessment methodology. This involves 1. Identification, brainstorming all potential risks including security, operational, compliance, and business risks. 2. Analysis, evaluating the likelihood and impact of each identified risk. 3. Prioritization, ranking risks based on their severity. 4. Mitigation, developing strategies to reduce or eliminate high-priority risks. 5. Monitoring, continuously reviewing and updating the risk assessment as the system evolves. This systematic process ensures that decisions are data-driven, defensible, and aligned with organizational objectives and regulatory requirements. It fosters a culture of proactive risk management rather than reactive problem solving. Question 4. System analysis indicates a need to implement a new feature within the Unified Communications Contact Center Express UCCX environment to enhance agent productivity. The proposed change involves modifying call routing logic and integrating with a third-party CRM system. What is the most appropriate approach to manage the potential risks associated with this implementation? Option A. Implement the new feature using the vendor's recommended default settings and assume that these configurations inherently satisfy all security and compliance requirements. Option B. Conduct a thorough, documented risk assessment that identifies potential threats, vulnerabilities, and impacts on system performance, security, and regulatory compliance, followed by the implementation of appropriate mitigation strategies. Option C. Proceed with the implementation immediately to capitalize on the productivity gains and address any issues that arise post-deployment through reactive troubleshooting. Option D. Postpone the implementation until a comprehensive security audit of the entire UCCX infrastructure can be completed, even if this delays the productivity benefits significantly. The correct answer is B. Conduct a thorough, documented risk assessment that identifies potential threats, vulnerabilities, and impacts on system performance, security, and regulatory compliance, followed by the implementation of appropriate mitigation strategies. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between rapid deployment of new features and the need to maintain system stability and security within the regulated environment of a contact center. The pressure to innovate and meet business demands can lead to shortcuts in the risk assessment process, potentially exposing the organization to operational disruptions, data breaches, or non-compliance with industry-specific regulations governing customer data and service availability. The complexity of UCCX, with its integration points and reliance on underlying network infrastructure, amplifies these risks. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive, documented risk assessment that identifies potential threats and vulnerabilities associated with the proposed configuration changes. This includes evaluating the impact on system performance, security, data integrity, and compliance with relevant regulations. A thorough assessment will involve stakeholders from IT, security, operations, and compliance teams to ensure all perspectives are considered. The outcome should be a clear understanding of the risks, proposed mitigation strategies, and a decision based on the residual risk level. This aligns with best practices for IT governance and regulatory compliance, ensuring that changes are implemented in a controlled and responsible manner, prioritizing the protection of sensitive customer data and the continuity of critical contact center operations. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing changes without a formal risk assessment is a direct violation of IT governance principles and can lead to significant regulatory penalties if data breaches or service disruptions occur. This approach prioritizes speed over security and compliance, demonstrating a failure to uphold professional responsibility. Adopting a wait-and-see approach after implementation, where risks are only addressed if they manifest, is reactive and highly irresponsible. It exposes the organization to immediate and potentially severe consequences, including regulatory fines and reputational damage, and fails to proactively manage potential threats. Relying solely on vendor default configurations without understanding their implications for the specific operational environment and regulatory requirements is also a failure. While vendors provide secure defaults, they may not account for unique business needs or specific regulatory mandates, leaving gaps in security and compliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach system changes by first establishing a clear understanding of the business objectives and the regulatory landscape. A structured risk assessment framework should then be applied, involving threat identification, vulnerability analysis, impact assessment, and the development of mitigation plans. This process should be iterative and involve cross-functional collaboration. Decisions should be data-driven, prioritizing the protection of customer data, system availability, and adherence to all applicable regulations. Regular review and updates to risk assessments are crucial, especially in dynamic technological and regulatory environments. Question 5. Stakeholder feedback indicates a strong desire to deploy a new Unified Communications Contact Center Express UCCX feature immediately to enhance customer service response times. However, the implementation team has not yet completed a formal risk assessment for this specific feature, which involves integrating with a new third-party data source. What is the most appropriate next step for the implementation team? Option A. Prioritize the technical implementation and address any potential risks that arise after the feature is live. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to identify potential security vulnerabilities, data privacy concerns, and compliance implications before proceeding with the implementation. Option C. Proceed with the implementation as requested by stakeholders, assuming that the new feature will not introduce significant new risks. Option D. Implement the feature with a quick, informal discussion among team members to identify any obvious risks, and then proceed. The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to identify potential security vulnerabilities, data privacy concerns, and compliance implications before proceeding with the implementation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT implementations, where the perceived urgency of a business request clashes with the structured, risk-aware processes required for secure and compliant system deployment. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for functionality with the long-term implications of security vulnerabilities and potential regulatory noncompliance. The pressure to deliver quickly can lead to shortcuts that bypass essential risk assessment steps, creating a significant professional dilemma for the implementation team. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves prioritizing a thorough risk assessment before proceeding with the implementation of the new UCCX feature. This aligns with best professional practices and regulatory expectations for IT security and data handling. A comprehensive risk assessment identifies potential threats, vulnerabilities, and the impact of those risks on the organization's operations, data integrity, and compliance posture. By conducting this assessment, the team ensures that any identified risks are understood, documented, and mitigated or accepted with informed consent, thereby adhering to principles of due diligence and responsible system deployment. This proactive approach safeguards the organization against potential security breaches, data loss, and regulatory penalties, which is a fundamental ethical and professional obligation. Incorrect approach is analysis. Proceeding with the implementation without a formal risk assessment is a direct violation of established IT security best practices and potentially regulatory requirements. This approach ignores the possibility of introducing new vulnerabilities or exacerbating existing ones, which could lead to unauthorized access, data breaches, or service disruptions. Such an oversight could result in significant financial penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust, all of which are serious professional failures. Implementing the feature with only a cursory, informal discussion about potential risks is also professionally unacceptable. While it acknowledges the need for risk consideration, it lacks the rigor and documentation required for a proper assessment. This informal approach is prone to overlooking critical risks due to bias, incomplete information, or a lack of systematic evaluation. It fails to provide an auditable trail of risk management activities, which is often a requirement for compliance and internal governance. Focusing solely on the technical functionality and assuming no new risks are introduced is a naive and dangerous assumption. Every new feature, integration, or configuration change has the potential to alter the security posture of a system. This approach demonstrates a lack of understanding of the interconnectedness of IT systems and the potential for unintended consequences, leading to a failure in professional duty to protect organizational assets and data. Professional reasoning. Professionals faced with this situation should adopt a structured decision-making process. First, they must clearly articulate the importance of the risk assessment process to stakeholders, explaining its role in protecting the organization and ensuring compliance. Second, they should advocate for allocating sufficient time and resources for a thorough risk assessment, even if it means a slight delay in the implementation timeline. Third, if stakeholders insist on proceeding without a full assessment, the professional must document their concerns and recommendations clearly, seeking formal sign-off for any deviation from standard procedures. This documentation serves as a record of due diligence and can protect the professional from liability if adverse events occur. The ultimate goal is to balance business needs with robust security and compliance, a core tenet of professional IT practice. Question 6. System analysis indicates that a new Unified Communications Contact Center Express (UCCX) implementation is nearing its go-live date, with significant pressure to meet business deadlines. While basic functionality is confirmed, concerns have been raised about potential security vulnerabilities that have not been exhaustively documented or addressed through a formal risk assessment process. What is the most appropriate course of action to ensure compliance and mitigate potential risks? Option A. Proceed with the go-live as scheduled, documenting the identified security concerns for post-implementation review and remediation. Option B. Implement a set of common security best practices and patches without a formal risk assessment, assuming these will address most potential vulnerabilities. Option C. Focus on addressing only the most critical security vulnerabilities identified by the technical team, deferring less severe issues to a later date. Option D. Delay the go-live to conduct a comprehensive risk assessment, identify all potential threats and vulnerabilities, and implement appropriate mitigation strategies before deployment. The correct answer is A. Proceed with the go-live as scheduled, documenting the identified security concerns for post-implementation review and remediation. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the immediate need for a functional contact center with the long-term implications of security vulnerabilities. The pressure to deploy quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise risk assessment, potentially exposing sensitive customer data and violating regulatory compliance. The core challenge lies in ensuring that risk mitigation strategies are not merely an afterthought, but are integrated into the implementation process from the outset, aligning with the principles of secure design and operation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that identifies potential threats to the UCCX implementation, evaluates their likelihood and impact, and defines appropriate mitigation strategies. This aligns with best professional practices by proactively addressing security concerns before they can be exploited. From a regulatory perspective, particularly within the U.S. framework governing data privacy and security, e.g., HIPAA for healthcare, PCI DSS for payment card data, or general data protection principles, a thorough risk assessment is often a mandated component of a secure system deployment. It demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to protecting sensitive information, thereby avoiding potential fines and reputational damage. This approach ensures that security is built into the system, not bolted on later. Incorrect approaches analysis. Prioritizing immediate functionality over a documented risk assessment is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It implies a disregard for potential data breaches and non-compliance with data protection laws. Such an approach leaves the organization exposed to significant financial penalties, legal liabilities, and severe damage to customer trust. Implementing security measures without a prior risk assessment, even if well-intentioned, is also problematic. It can lead to misallocation of resources, addressing the wrong threats, or implementing ineffective controls. This shotgun approach to security is inefficient and may not cover critical vulnerabilities, again risking regulatory noncompliance and data compromise. Focusing solely on technical security features without considering the operational and human elements of risk is another failure. A risk assessment must encompass the entire ecosystem, including user training, access controls, and incident response plans. Neglecting these aspects creates gaps that attackers can exploit, leading to breaches and regulatory violations. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to UCCX implementation. This involves 1. Understanding the regulatory landscape relevant to the data handled by the contact center. 2. Conducting a thorough risk assessment to identify and prioritize potential threats and vulnerabilities. 3. Developing and implementing a risk mitigation plan that addresses identified risks. 4. Integrating security and compliance considerations into every phase of the implementation lifecycle. 5. Regularly reviewing and updating the risk assessment and mitigation strategies as the environment evolves. This systematic process ensures that the UCCX implementation is not only functional, but also secure, compliant, and resilient against threats. Question 7. Process analysis reveals that the implementation of Cisco Unified Communications Contact Center Express, UCCX, will introduce new data collection points for agent performance monitoring and customer interaction logging. Given the strict regulatory framework governing customer data privacy and security, which approach to managing the associated risks is most professionally sound and compliant? Option A. Implement the UCCX system with a wait-and-see approach to data security and privacy risks, addressing any issues that arise organically after the system is in production. Option B. Focus primarily on the technical functionality and cost-effectiveness of the UCCX solution, deferring any detailed data security and privacy considerations until after the system is operational. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive data risk assessment specifically for the UCCX implementation, identifying potential threats to customer data and implementing appropriate mitigation strategies before full deployment. Option D. Prioritize achieving the lowest possible implementation cost for UCCX, even if it means reducing the scope or thoroughness of the data risk assessment process. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive data risk assessment specifically for the UCCX implementation, identifying potential threats to customer data and implementing appropriate mitigation strategies before full deployment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in implementing new technology within a regulated environment. The core difficulty lies in balancing the desire for enhanced functionality and efficiency offered by UCCX with the stringent requirements of data privacy and security mandated by relevant regulations. Specifically, the introduction of new data collection points within the contact center, even if seemingly innocuous, can inadvertently create new vulnerabilities or expand the scope of regulated data processing. The challenge is to proactively identify and mitigate these risks without stifling innovation or hindering operational improvements. This requires a deep understanding of both the technical capabilities of UCCX and the legal obligations concerning customer data. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that specifically targets the data handling aspects of the UCCX implementation. This aligns with the principle of privacy by design and security by design, which are fundamental to many data protection regulations. By systematically identifying potential threats to customer data, e.g., unauthorized access, data breaches, improper data retention, and evaluating the likelihood and impact of these threats, the organization can implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to mitigate them. This proactive stance ensures compliance with data protection laws by embedding security and privacy considerations into the implementation process from the outset, rather than attempting to retrofit them later. It demonstrates a commitment to safeguarding sensitive information and maintaining customer trust. Incorrect approaches analysis. Focusing solely on the technical functionality of UCCX without a corresponding data risk assessment is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach overlooks the potential for new data collection points to inadvertently capture or expose sensitive customer information, leading to non-compliance with data privacy laws. It also fails to address potential security vulnerabilities that could be exploited, resulting in data breaches and reputational damage. Prioritizing cost savings above all else, to the detriment of a thorough risk assessment, is another critical failure. While cost-effectiveness is important, it cannot supersede legal and ethical obligations to protect customer data. Cutting corners on risk assessment can lead to costly data breaches, fines, and legal liabilities that far outweigh any initial savings. This approach demonstrates a disregard for regulatory compliance and customer well-being. Implementing UCCX with a wait-and-see approach to data security and privacy risks is equally unacceptable. This reactive stance is inherently dangerous in a regulated environment. It assumes that no issues will arise or that they can be addressed after the fact, which is often too late to prevent harm or mitigate legal consequences. Data protection regulations typically require proactive measures, not reactive ones, to ensure compliance and protect individuals' rights. Professional reasoning. Professionals tasked with implementing UCCX must adopt a risk-based approach. This involves 1. Understanding the regulatory landscape. Thoroughly familiarize yourself with all applicable data protection and privacy laws relevant to the organization's operations. 2. Identifying data flows. Map out how customer data will be collected, processed, stored, and transmitted by the UCCX system. 3. Conducting a risk assessment. Systematically identify potential threats and vulnerabilities related to data handling within the UCCX implementation. 4. Implementing controls. Design and implement appropriate technical and organizational safeguards to mitigate identified risks. 5. Continuous monitoring and review. Regularly review and update risk assessments and security measures as the system evolves and new threats emerge. This structured approach ensures that technology implementations are not only functional but also compliant and secure, thereby protecting both the organization and its customers. Question 8. Risk assessment procedures indicate that the implementation of Cisco Unified Communications Contact Center Express UCCX may introduce new vulnerabilities related to the handling of customer personally identifiable information, PI, and the potential for unauthorized access to call recordings. Which of the following approaches best addresses these identified risks within the context of U.S. federal data privacy regulations? Option A. Implementing robust access controls and encryption for call recordings, along with comprehensive data masking techniques for PII displayed in agent interfaces, and ensuring all configurations align with relevant U.S. data privacy laws such as HIPAA or CCPA where applicable. Option B. Prioritizing the speed of deployment and user adoption by deferring detailed security and compliance reviews until after the system is fully operational. Option C. Relying solely on the default security settings provided by Cisco for the UCCX solution, assuming they are sufficient to meet all regulatory requirements. Option D. Focusing security efforts primarily on network perimeter defenses, assuming that internal system vulnerabilities will be adequately protected by existing general IT security policies. The correct answer is A. Implementing robust access controls and encryption for call recordings, along with comprehensive data masking techniques for PII displayed in agent interfaces, and ensuring all configurations align with relevant U.S. data privacy laws such as HIPAA or CCPA where applicable. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in implementing new technology within a regulated environment, balancing the need for robust security and compliance with the practicalities of system deployment and user adoption. The professional challenge lies in identifying and mitigating risks that could lead to regulatory noncompliance, data breaches, or service disruptions, all while ensuring the UCCX solution effectively meets business objectives. Careful judgment is required to prioritize risks based on their potential impact and likelihood, and to select appropriate mitigation strategies that align with the organization's risk appetite and regulatory obligations. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it systematically identifies potential threats to the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of sensitive customer data and the operational continuity of the contact center. By focusing on the specific regulatory framework relevant to the exam's jurisdiction, which is assumed to be U.S.-based for this context, given the exam code, this approach ensures that all implemented controls and procedures directly address compliance requirements. This proactive identification and mitigation of risks, particularly those related to data privacy, e.g., PI, PCI DSS if applicable, and system security, is a fundamental ethical and regulatory obligation. It demonstrates due diligence in protecting customer information and maintaining service reliability, thereby preventing potential fines, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. An incorrect approach that overlooks the specific data handling requirements of the chosen regulatory framework would be professionally unacceptable. For instance, implementing security measures without considering how they impact the lawful processing and storage of customer data, or failing to document how the UCCX solution will comply with data retention policies, constitutes a significant regulatory failure. Another incorrect approach might be to prioritize cost savings over essential security and compliance features, leading to vulnerabilities that could be exploited, resulting in data breaches and noncompliance with data protection laws. Ethically, this demonstrates a disregard for customer privacy and the organization's responsibility to protect sensitive information. A third incorrect approach could involve assuming existing security protocols are sufficient without a specific assessment of the UCCX unique integration points and potential attack vectors, leading to a false sense of security and leaving the organization exposed to unforeseen risks. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment methodology. This begins with identifying all potential assets and threats relevant to the UCCX implementation. Next, vulnerabilities associated with these assets and threats are analyzed. The likelihood and impact of each identified risk are then evaluated to determine its severity. Based on this assessment, appropriate mitigation strategies are developed, which may include implementing new controls, modifying existing ones, transferring risk, or accepting it. Crucially, all decisions must be documented and aligned with the specific regulatory requirements of the operating jurisdiction. Regular review and updates to the risk assessment are also essential to adapt to evolving threats and system changes. Question 9. Strategic planning requires a thorough evaluation of different implementation methodologies for new Unified Communications Contact Center Express UCCX solution. Considering the potential impact on operational efficiency, user adoption, and compliance, which of the following approaches represents the most prudent and professionally sound strategy for deploying a UCCX system? Option A. An immediate, big bang deployment of all features simultaneously to expedite the transition and minimize disruption. Option B. Implementing the system with a focus solely on technical specifications, assuming users will adapt to the new interface without formal training. Option C. A phased rollout, starting with core functionalities and gradually introducing advanced features, coupled with comprehensive user training and ongoing support. Option D. Prioritizing the integration of the most complex and innovative features, first to showcase the system's full capabilities from the outset. The correct answer is C. A phased rollout, starting with core functionalities and gradually introducing advanced features, coupled with comprehensive user training and ongoing support. Explanation. Scenario analysis. Implementing a Unified Communications Contact Center Express (UCCX) solution involves significant strategic planning, particularly concerning the integration of new technologies with existing infrastructure and business processes. The challenge lies in balancing the desire for enhanced functionality and efficiency with the need for compliance, security, and user adoption. A key aspect of this is evaluating different implementation approaches to ensure the chosen path aligns with organizational goals and regulatory requirements. This scenario is professionally challenging because a poorly chosen approach can lead to project delays, budget overruns, security vulnerabilities, and failure to meet business objectives, all of which have direct implications for operational effectiveness and customer satisfaction. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a phased implementation approach that prioritizes core functionalities and user training. This strategy allows for iterative testing, feedback incorporation, and risk mitigation. By starting with essential features and gradually introducing more complex ones, the implementation team can ensure stability, validate the solution's effectiveness in a controlled environment, and provide adequate support to end users. This aligns with best practices in project management and IT service delivery, minimizing disruption and maximizing the chances of successful adoption. From a regulatory perspective, this phased approach facilitates easier auditing and compliance checks at each stage, ensuring that data handling, security protocols, and service-level agreements are met before full deployment. Incorrect approaches analysis. A big bang or all-at-once implementation, while potentially faster in theory, carries significant risks. It can overwhelm users, make troubleshooting difficult due to the sheer volume of changes, and increase the likelihood of widespread system failures. This approach is professionally unacceptable as it demonstrates a lack of risk management and foresight, potentially leading to non-compliance with service-level agreements and data integrity standards if issues arise. Implementing without comprehensive user training and change management is another professionally unacceptable approach. This ignores the human element of technology adoption. Users who are not adequately trained will struggle to utilize the new system effectively, leading to decreased productivity, increased support calls, and a failure to realize the intended benefits of the UCCX solution. This can indirectly lead to compliance issues if incorrect usage results in data mishandling or security breaches. Focusing solely on technical features without considering business process integration is also a flawed strategy. UCCX is a tool to enhance business operations, not an end in itself. An implementation that doesn't align with or improve existing workflows will likely be met with resistance and will not deliver the expected return on investment. This can lead to operational inefficiencies that may have downstream regulatory implications if, for example, customer interaction, logging, or reporting becomes compromised due to poor integration. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach UCCX implementation by first conducting a thorough business needs analysis and risk assessment. This should be followed by selecting an implementation methodology that allows for controlled deployment, continuous feedback, and robust testing. Prioritizing user training and change management is paramount. Regular communication with stakeholders, including IT, operations, and compliance teams, is essential throughout the project lifecycle to ensure alignment and address any emerging concerns proactively. The decision-making process should be guided by a framework that balances technical feasibility, business objectives, user experience, and regulatory adherence. Question 10. Market research demonstrates a growing customer expectation for transparency regarding call recording and data privacy. A financial services organization is implementing a new Unified Communications Contact Center Express (UCCX) solution and needs to ensure that customer consent for call recording is obtained in compliance with relevant data protection regulations. The primary goal is to capture consent at the earliest possible point in the customer interaction within the IVR system, ensuring that recordings are only made for calls where explicit consent has been provided. Which of the following implementation strategies best addresses this requirement while adhering to regulatory frameworks for data privacy and consent? Option A. Rely on the assumption that by initiating a call to the contact center, customers implicitly consent to call recording and only record calls where no explicit objection is raised. Option B. Implement an IVR prompt that clearly informs the customer that the call may be recorded for quality and training purposes and requires them to press a specific key to continue the call, thereby signifying their consent. Option C. Proceed with call recording by default and provide a post-call notification to the customer that their call was recorded, offering them an option to request deletion of the recording. Option D. Implement a system that flags calls for potential recording, but only initiates the actual recording process after an agent has verbally confirmed consent during the initial interaction. The correct answer is B. Implement an IVR prompt that clearly informs the customer that the call may be recorded for quality and training purposes and requires them to press a specific key to continue the call, thereby signifying their consent. Explanation. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in UCCX environments, balancing the need for efficient call routing with the regulatory requirement for accurate data logging and reporting, particularly concerning customer consent for recording. The professional challenge lies in ensuring that the technical implementation directly supports compliance without compromising the user experience or operational efficiency. Careful judgment is required to select an approach that is both technically sound and legally defensible. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it proactively addresses the regulatory requirement for customer consent before any sensitive data, like call recordings, is captured. This aligns with data privacy principles and regulations that mandate informed consent. By integrating consent mechanisms directly into the IVR flow, the implementation ensures that consent is obtained at the earliest possible point in the customer interaction, thereby minimizing the risk of non-compliance and potential legal repercussions. This also provides a clear audit trail for consent, which is crucial for regulatory adherence. An incorrect approach that bypasses or delays the consent mechanism, such as proceeding with recording without explicit consent or relying on a post-call notification, fails to meet the informed consent standard. This can lead to regulatory violations, fines, and damage to the organization's reputation. Another incorrect approach that assumes consent based on call initiation without a clear affirmative action from the customer is also problematic, as it does not provide sufficient evidence of explicit consent. Finally, an approach that prioritizes technical simplicity over regulatory compliance by simply not recording calls where consent is uncertain might avoid immediate violations, but fails to meet the business need for call recording for quality assurance or dispute resolution, thus not being a complete solution. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes understanding and adhering to all applicable regulations before designing the technical solution. This involves a thorough review of data privacy laws and specific industry guidelines related to customer consent and call recording. The technical implementation should then be designed to directly support these compliance requirements, with clear documentation of how each component contributes to regulatory adherence. When faced with conflicting requirements, e.g., efficiency vs. compliance, the regulatory imperative must always take precedence, and solutions should be sought that satisfy both, or at least clearly document the trade-offs and risks associated with prioritizing one over the other. Question 11. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing the full suite of advanced reporting and analytics features in UCCX offers significant long-term operational efficiencies and customer insight capabilities, but requires a substantial upfront investment and a complex integration process. A simpler, core functionality deployment is less expensive and quicker to implement, but would limit future scalability and data analysis potential. Considering the need for robust data security and compliance with U.S. federal regulations regarding customer data privacy, which implementation strategy represents the most prudent and professionally responsible approach? Option A. Implement the advanced features in a separate, isolated environment for testing, without integrating them into the live production system, until all potential issues are resolved, even if this delays full operational benefit. Option B. Implement only the core functionality and defer the advanced features indefinitely due to the upfront investment and integration complexity, prioritizing immediate cost savings. Option C. Immediately implement the full suite of advanced reporting and analytics features to maximize immediate benefits, assuming that any compliance issues can be addressed retroactively. Option D. Implement the core functionality first, with a clear roadmap and budget allocated for a phased integration of advanced reporting and analytics features after initial stabilization and thorough security audits. Correct answer is D. Implement the core functionality first, with a clear roadmap and budget allocated for a phased integration of advanced reporting and analytics features after initial stabilization and thorough security audits. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT implementation projects, balancing the desire for advanced features with the practical constraints of budget and operational readiness. The professional challenge lies in making a recommendation that is not only technically sound, but also aligns with business objectives and regulatory compliance, particularly concerning data handling and customer privacy. A thorough evaluation requires understanding the long-term implications of each choice beyond immediate cost savings. The correct approach prioritizes a phased implementation that allows for thorough testing, user adoption, and compliance verification at each stage. This aligns with best practices for IT project management, emphasizing risk mitigation and controlled rollout. From a regulatory perspective, especially within a U.S. context governed by frameworks like HIPAA for healthcare data or PCI DSS for payment card information, a staged approach allows for granular control and validation of security and privacy measures before full deployment. This minimizes the risk of non-compliance and potential data breaches, which carry significant financial and reputational penalties. It also allows for iterative feedback, ensuring the solution meets user needs and operational requirements effectively. An incorrect approach that immediately deploys all advanced features without adequate testing or phased integration risks introducing unforeseen technical issues or security vulnerabilities. This could lead to service disruptions, data integrity problems, or non-compliance with data protection regulations. For instance, if the UCCX implementation handles sensitive customer information, a rushed deployment without proper security controls could violate regulations like the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, or industry-specific mandates, leading to fines and legal action. Another incorrect approach might be to defer advanced features indefinitely due to perceived complexity or cost, even if they offer significant long-term benefits in terms of efficiency or customer experience. This could lead to a competitive disadvantage and missed opportunities for operational improvement, indirectly impacting the organization's ability to meet service-level agreements or customer expectations, which can have regulatory implications in certain industries, e.g., telecommunications. The professional decision-making process should involve a comprehensive assessment of technical feasibility, operational impact, security and privacy implications, and alignment with business goals. This includes consulting with stakeholders from IT, operations, legal, and compliance departments. A risk-based approach, where potential issues are identified and mitigated proactively, is crucial. Furthermore, understanding the specific regulatory landscape applicable to the organization's industry and geographic location is paramount to ensuring any implementation adheres to all legal and ethical obligations. Question 12. Risk assessment procedures indicate a potential for non-compliance with data privacy regulations due to the sensitive nature of customer interactions handled by the Unified Communications Contact Center Express (UCCX) system. Which of the following approaches best mitigates this risk during the UCCX implementation? Option A. Assume default UCCX security settings are sufficient for all data privacy requirements without specific validation against applicable regulations. Option B. Implement UCCX with a focus on rapid deployment, deferring detailed data security and compliance validation to a post-implementation audit. Option C. Delegate all data privacy and security responsibilities solely to the central IT security department, with minimal direct involvement from the UCCX implementation team. Option D. Proactively identify data handling requirements, map them to UCCX security features, e.g., access controls, encryption, auditing, and integrate with existing organizational compliance policies and frameworks. The correct answer is B. Implement UCCX with a focus on rapid deployment, deferring detailed data security and compliance validation to a post-implementation audit. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in contact center implementations, where the technical solution must align with evolving business needs and regulatory compliance. The professional challenge lies in balancing the immediate implementation goals with the long-term implications of data handling and customer privacy, especially when new regulations are introduced. The need for a robust, scalable, and compliant solution requires careful consideration of how UCCX features interact with data storage and access controls. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves proactively identifying and mitigating risks associated with data handling by leveraging UCCX built-in security features and integrating with existing compliance frameworks. This aligns with best practices for data protection and privacy, ensuring that customer information is handled securely and in accordance with relevant regulations. Specifically, it demonstrates a commitment to due diligence in understanding the data flow and implementing appropriate controls within the UCCX environment. This approach prioritizes a secure and compliant implementation from the outset, which is crucial for avoiding future breaches and regulatory penalties. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves prioritizing rapid deployment over thorough security and compliance checks. This fails to address potential vulnerabilities in data handling and storage, creating a significant risk of non-compliance with data protection regulations. Such an approach is ethically questionable, as it places business expediency above customer privacy and legal obligations. Another incorrect approach is to assume that standard UCCX configurations are inherently compliant without specific validation. This overlooks the nuances of data classification, access control, and retention policies that are often dictated by specific regulatory requirements. Relying on assumptions rather than verification can lead to unintentional breaches of privacy and regulatory violations. A third incorrect approach is to defer all data security and compliance concerns to a separate IT security team without active involvement from the UCCX implementation team. While collaboration is essential, the implementation team must have a foundational understanding of how UCCX features impact data security and compliance to ensure the solution is designed and configured correctly from the ground up. This lack of integrated responsibility can lead to gaps in security and compliance that are difficult to rectify later. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to UCCX implementation, integrating security and compliance considerations from the initial design phase. This involves understanding the types of data that will be processed, identifying relevant regulatory requirements, and mapping these to UCCX functionalities and configurations. Regular reviews and validation against compliance standards are essential throughout the project lifecycle. Collaboration with legal, compliance, and security teams is critical, but the implementation team bears the primary responsibility for ensuring the solution meets these requirements. Question 13. System analysis indicates a potential conflict between optimizing call queue wait times for high-volume periods and ensuring full accessibility for all users, including those with specific communication needs, within a new Cisco Unified Communications Contact Center Express UCCX implementation. Which approach best balances these competing requirements while adhering to best practices for contact center design and regulatory compliance? Option A. Implement a standard inbound routing strategy based on agent skill groups and availability, deferring any specific accessibility considerations to a later phase of the project once the core functionality is stable. Option B. Implement a routing strategy that prioritizes minimizing average wait times by dynamically adjusting queue thresholds based on real-time call volume, and address accessibility concerns through post-implementation user feedback and subsequent adjustments. Option C. Focus solely on maximizing agent utilization and minimizing average handle time to reduce overall queue lengths, assuming that any accessibility issues will be minor and can be resolved through general customer service training. Option D. Design the UCCX routing strategy to include dedicated queues or alternative routing paths for users with specific accessibility needs, such as TTY/TDD compatibility or integration with assistive technologies, and test these paths rigorously during the implementation phase. The correct answer is B. Implement a routing strategy that prioritizes minimizing average wait times by dynamically adjusting queue thresholds based on real-time call volume, and address accessibility concerns through post-implementation user feedback and subsequent adjustments. Explanation: this scenario presents a common challenge in implementing UCCX solutions, balancing the need for efficient call routing with the regulatory requirement to provide accessible services to all users, including those with disabilities. The professional challenge lies in interpreting and applying accessibility guidelines within the technical constraints of a contact center solution. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the chosen routing strategy does not inadvertently create barriers for any user group. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it proactively addresses accessibility requirements by incorporating them into the design and testing phases. This aligns with the ethical obligation to provide equitable service and adheres to regulatory frameworks that mandate accessibility. By involving stakeholders and conducting thorough testing, the implementation ensures that the UCCX solution is not only functional but also compliant and inclusive. An incorrect approach that prioritizes only call volume and agent availability without considering accessibility would fail to meet regulatory obligations. This could lead to a situation where users with specific needs, such as those requiring TTY/TDD access or alternative communication methods, are unable to effectively reach support. Such a failure constitutes a direct violation of accessibility laws and ethical principles of service provision. Another incorrect approach that delays accessibility considerations until post-implementation is also professionally unsound. This reactive stance increases the risk of costly rework, potential non-compliance penalties, and a negative user experience, demonstrating a lack of foresight and commitment to inclusive design. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that integrates compliance and accessibility from the outset. This involves understanding relevant regulations, engaging with diverse user groups to identify potential barriers, and embedding accessibility considerations into every stage of the implementation lifecycle, from initial design to final testing and ongoing maintenance. Question 14. Governance review demonstrates that the current Unified Communications Contact Center Express UCCX implementation's best practice evaluation process primarily focuses on agent productivity metrics and system uptime, with minimal consideration for data privacy and customer consent mechanisms. Which of the following approaches best addresses this gap and aligns with professional best practices for a US-based organization? Option A. Implement a comprehensive evaluation framework that includes regular audits of data handling procedures, verification of customer consent mechanisms for call recording and data storage, and assessment of compliance with relevant US data privacy laws, alongside existing performance metrics. Option B. Focus the evaluation solely on technical security measures like encryption and access controls, as these are the primary drivers of data protection in a UCCX environment. Option C. Conduct a one-time review of the UCCX system's data retention policies to ensure they meet minimum legal requirements, without ongoing monitoring or integration with performance evaluations. Option D. Expand the existing evaluation to include more detailed agent performance reports and introduce automated alerts for system outages, assuming that efficient operations inherently protect customer data. The correct answer is A. Implement a comprehensive evaluation framework that includes regular audits of data handling procedures, verification of customer consent mechanisms for call recording and data storage, and assessment of compliance with relevant US data privacy laws, alongside existing performance metrics. Explanation: this scenario presents a common challenge in implementing and managing UCCX solutions, ensuring that the chosen approach to best practice evaluation aligns with the specific regulatory and operational requirements of the organization, particularly concerning data privacy and customer interaction logging. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for comprehensive performance monitoring with the strict mandates of data protection laws, which can vary significantly by jurisdiction. A robust evaluation must consider not only technical efficacy, but also legal compliance and ethical implications. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a holistic review that integrates technical performance metrics with adherence to data privacy regulations. This ensures that the UCCX implementation not only functions efficiently, but also operates within legal boundaries, safeguarding sensitive customer information. By involving relevant stakeholders, including legal and compliance teams, the evaluation process becomes more thorough and less prone to overlooking critical regulatory requirements. This proactive integration of compliance into the evaluation framework is essential for maintaining trust and avoiding potential legal repercussions. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on technical performance metrics without considering data privacy implications fails to meet regulatory obligations. For instance, if the evaluation overlooks the need for anonymizing or securely handling call recordings and chat logs, it could lead to violations of data protection laws, such as GDPR or CCPA, depending on the specified jurisdiction for the exam, which is assumed to be US-based for this example. Another incorrect approach might involve implementing overly broad data retention policies that exceed legal requirements or fail to adequately secure stored data, creating unnecessary risks and potential compliance breaches. A third incorrect approach could be to ignore customer consent mechanisms for data collection and usage, directly contravening ethical and legal standards for handling personal information. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a multidisciplinary approach. First, clearly define the scope of the evaluation, including all relevant technical, operational, and regulatory requirements. Second, engage all necessary stakeholders, such as IT, operations, legal, and compliance departments, to ensure all perspectives are considered. Third, establish clear criteria for evaluation that encompass both performance and compliance. Fourth, conduct a thorough risk assessment to identify potential areas of noncompliance or operational inefficiency. Finally, document the evaluation process and findings meticulously, with clear action plans for any identified gaps. Question 15. The efficiency study reveals that implementing a new call recording feature within the Unified Communications Contact Center Express (UCCX) environment could significantly improve agent training and quality assurance. However, the implementation team is debating the best approach to ensure compliance with data privacy regulations and ethical considerations. Which of the following approaches best balances operational efficiency with regulatory and ethical requirements? Option A. Implement call recording with a notification that is only accessible via a link on the company's website, which customers would have to actively seek out. Option B. Implement call recording and rely on implied consent by including a brief mention in the company's lengthy online terms of service that calls may be recorded. Option C. Implement call recording without any explicit customer notification, assuming that customers implicitly consent by continuing the call. Option D. Implement call recording with a clear, upfront notification to customers at the beginning of each call, stating that the call is being recorded for quality and training purposes, and providing an option for customers to opt out if they do not consent. The correct answer is D. Implement call recording with a clear, upfront notification to customers at the beginning of each call, stating that the call is being recorded for quality and training purposes, and providing an option for customers to opt out if they do not consent. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the technical implementation of UCCX with the regulatory and ethical obligations concerning data privacy and customer consent. The core of the challenge lies in ensuring that the chosen approach to call recording and data handling aligns with the specific regulations governing data protection in the relevant jurisdiction, which for this exam is assumed to be U.S. federal and state regulations. A failure to do so can lead to significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and a loss of customer trust. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes explicit customer consent and transparent data handling policies, which are fundamental tenets of data privacy regulations like the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, and other state-specific privacy laws, as well as federal regulations like HIPAA if health information is involved. By clearly informing customers about call recording, its purpose, and their rights, and by obtaining affirmative consent where required, the implementation adheres to the principles of transparency and lawful processing of personal data. This proactive stance minimizes legal risk and builds trust. An incorrect approach that involves recording calls without explicit consent or with misleading information violates the core principles of data privacy. Such an action could be considered a breach of privacy laws, leading to fines and legal action. For instance, failing to obtain consent for recording conversations containing personally identifiable information (PI) or protected health information (FI) would directly contravene regulations like CCPA and HIPAA, respectively. Another incorrect approach that relies on implied consent or buried consent within lengthy terms of service is also problematic. While some jurisdictions might allow for implied consent in certain contexts, best practice and increasingly stringent regulations favor explicit, informed consent, especially for sensitive data. This approach risks being deemed insufficient by regulators and can lead to customer disputes. A third incorrect approach that fails to implement robust security measures for recorded data exposes the organization to data breaches, which carry severe penalties under various data protection laws and can result in significant financial and reputational harm. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of applicable data privacy laws and regulations in all relevant jurisdictions. This includes identifying what constitutes personal data, sensitive data, and protected information. Before implementing any contact center feature that involves data collection or processing, a risk assessment should be conducted, focusing on potential privacy implications. Consulting with legal counsel specializing in data privacy is crucial to ensure compliance. Furthermore, a customer-centric approach that prioritizes transparency and user control over their data should guide all implementation decisions. This involves designing clear and accessible privacy notices and consent mechanisms. Regular training for contact center agents on data handling procedures and privacy policies is also essential. Question 16. Assessment of the most appropriate strategy for implementing a new real-time reporting module within an existing Unified Communications Contact Center Express UCCX environment, given that the current system has performance limitations and the business requires immediate access to accurate, up-to-the-minute contact center metrics upon deployment. Option A. Implement the reporting module during peak business hours to minimize the perceived impact on users, proceeding with minimal testing to expedite the go-live process. Option B. Prioritize the technical installation of the reporting module and defer the integration and validation of the real-time reporting functionality to a subsequent project phase. Option C. Conduct a phased rollout of the reporting module, starting with a pilot group, followed by incremental deployment to the entire user base, ensuring comprehensive testing and a detailed rollback plan are in place for each phase. Option D. Deploy the new reporting module directly into the production environment during a scheduled maintenance window, assuming the existing system's limitations will not significantly impact the new module's performance. The correct answer is C. Conduct a phased rollout of the reporting module, starting with a pilot group, followed by incremental deployment to the entire user base, ensuring comprehensive testing and a detailed rollback plan are in place for each phase. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge or a critical business requirement for real-time reporting conflicts with the technical limitations of a legacy system and the need to maintain service availability during the transition. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for accurate data with the risks associated with disruptive changes, all while adhering to potential regulatory mandates for data integrity and reporting accuracy. The pressure to deliver a solution quickly can lead to overlooking crucial planning and testing phases, which are vital for a successful and compliant implementation. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a phased implementation with robust testing and a rollback plan. This aligns with best professional practices for IT project management, particularly in regulated environments. By conducting thorough user acceptance testing, UAT, and performance testing in a staging environment that mirrors production, the implementation team can identify and resolve issues before they impact live operations. The inclusion of a detailed rollback strategy ensures that if unforeseen problems arise during the go-live phase, the system can be quickly reverted to its previous stable state, minimizing downtime and data discrepancies. This methodical approach safeguards against data integrity issues and ensures that reporting requirements can be met accurately and reliably once the new system is fully operational, thereby adhering to implicit or explicit regulatory expectations for accurate business operations and reporting. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing the solution directly into the production environment without adequate testing or a rollback plan is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach disregards the potential for data corruption, system instability, and service disruption, which could lead to inaccurate reporting and non-compliance with any regulations requiring timely and accurate business data. Demonstrates a lack of due diligence and professional responsibility. Attempting to implement the solution during peak business hours to minimize perceived downtime, but without comprehensive testing or a rollback strategy, is also professionally unacceptable. While the intention might be to reduce business impact, the lack of preparation significantly increases the risk of critical failures that could have far more severe consequences than a planned, albeit potentially disruptive, maintenance window. This approach prioritizes speed over safety and compliance, focusing solely on the technical implementation and deferring the reporting integration to a later phase, without a clear plan or commitment, is another failure. This creates a gap in critical business reporting, which can have immediate regulatory implications if such reporting is mandated. It also indicates poor project management and a failure to deliver a complete, functional solution that meets all business and potentially regulatory requirements. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such implementation challenges should adopt a risk-based approach. This involves thoroughly understanding all business and regulatory requirements, assessing the technical capabilities and limitations of the existing and proposed systems, and meticulously planning each phase of the implementation. Key steps include defining clear success criteria, conducting comprehensive risk assessments, developing detailed test plans including UAT, performance and integration testing, creating robust rollback procedures, and establishing clear communication channels with all stakeholders. Prioritizing a phased rollout with extensive validation in a controlled environment before full production deployment is paramount to ensuring both technical success and regulatory compliance. Question 17. Comparative studies suggest that the successful implementation of Unified Communications Contact Center Express (UCCX) hinges on more than just technical integration. When faced with a scenario where the contact center's unique workflow requirements, such as specific call handling protocols and supervisor monitoring needs, are not fully captured during the initial planning phase, which implementation approach best aligns with professional best practices and regulatory expectations for effective service delivery? Option A. Conduct a rapid, high-level assessment of agent and supervisor needs, and then proceed with a configuration that balances standard features with perceived critical requirements. Option B. Proceed with the vendor's default UCCX configuration to ensure a timely deployment, and address any workflow gaps through post-implementation workarounds. Option C. Focus solely on integrating UCCX with the existing telephony and CRM systems, assuming that agent and supervisor workflows can be adapted to the system's capabilities. Option D. Initiate a comprehensive reevaluation of contact center workflows and agent/supervisor requirements, followed by a tailored UCCX configuration and a phased pilot deployment with user feedback. The correct answer is B. Proceed with the vendor's default UCCX configuration to ensure a timely deployment and address any workflow gaps through post-implementation workarounds. Explanation. Scenario analysis. Implementing a new Unified Communications Contact Center Express (UCCX) solution often involves integrating with existing IT infrastructure and adhering to specific business process requirements. A key challenge arises when the chosen UCCX configuration, while technically functional, does not adequately address the nuanced operational needs of the contact center agents and supervisors. This can lead to decreased efficiency, increased error rates, and agent dissatisfaction, ultimately impacting customer service quality. The professional challenge lies in balancing technical feasibility with practical usability and ensuring the solution aligns with the organization's strategic goals for customer engagement. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough, iterative process of requirements gathering, solution design, and pilot testing with actual end users. This ensures that the UCCX implementation is not only technically sound, but also practically aligned with the daily workflows and specific needs of the contact center agents and supervisors. This user-centric methodology, often involving phased rollouts and feedback loops, is best professional practice because it minimizes disruption, maximizes user adoption, and ensures the solution delivers tangible business value. It directly addresses the core purpose of UCCX, to enhance contact center operations and customer interactions, thereby fulfilling the implicit regulatory and business objectives of effective service delivery. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves prioritizing a rapid deployment of the UCCX solution based solely on the vendor's default configurations, without sufficient validation against the specific operational requirements of the contact center. This can lead to a system that is technically installed but functionally inadequate, failing to meet the unique demands of the agents and supervisors. This approach risks violating the implicit ethical obligation to provide a functional and efficient tool for employees, potentially leading to operational inefficiencies and a negative impact on customer service, which could have indirect regulatory implications if service-level agreements are breached. Another incorrect approach is to implement the UCCX solution without involving key stakeholders, such as experienced agents and supervisors, in the design and testing phases. This oversight can result in a system that overlooks critical usability features or workflow optimizations that are essential for efficient operation. Ethically, this demonstrates a failure to consider the impact of the technology on the end users, potentially leading to frustration and reduced productivity. From a business perspective, it misses an opportunity to leverage the invaluable on-the-ground knowledge of the contact center staff, leading to a suboptimal implementation. A third incorrect approach is to focus exclusively on the technical integration aspects of UCCX, neglecting the configuration of agent and supervisor desktop layouts, scripting, and reporting features that directly impact daily operations. This can result in a technically connected system that is difficult to use, lacks essential functionality for managing customer interactions, and provides insufficient insights into performance metrics. This failure to configure the system for optimal operational use can lead to breaches of service-level agreements and a general decline in the quality of customer service, which could have regulatory consequences depending on the industry and specific service commitments. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a phased implementation strategy that includes comprehensive discovery and validation of business requirements. This involves engaging with all relevant stakeholders, conducting pilot programs with representative user groups, and establishing clear feedback mechanisms. The decision-making process should prioritize user adoption and operational efficiency alongside technical feasibility. When faced with potential trade-offs between a quick technical setup and a robust, user-validated implementation, the professional decision should always lean towards the latter, as it ensures long-term success, minimizes risks of operational failure, and upholds the ethical responsibility to deliver effective solutions. Question 18. The performance metrics show a significant increase in customer complaints related to data handling, coinciding with the recent expansion of call recording analysis for agent coaching. What is the most appropriate implementation strategy to address both the performance improvement goals and potential data privacy concerns? Option A. Cease all call recording analysis until a comprehensive review of all customer data handling policies can be completed. Option B. Continue with the current call recording analysis strategy, assuming customer complaints are unrelated to the data handling aspects of the recording itself. Option C. Implement automated PII redaction for all sensitive data fields within call recordings before they are accessed for analysis. Option D. Apply PII masking only to calls identified as having a high probability of containing sensitive financial information. The correct answer is C. Implement automated PII redaction for all sensitive data fields within call recordings before they are accessed for analysis. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge in UCCX environments, ensuring compliance with data privacy regulations while optimizing agent performance. The challenge lies in balancing the need for detailed call recording analysis to identify training opportunities and process improvements with the legal and ethical obligations to protect customer personally identifiable information, PI. Misinterpreting or misapplying data privacy guidelines can lead to significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and erosion of customer trust. The pressure to demonstrate ROI from UCCX implementation can sometimes lead to overlooking these critical compliance aspects. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves implementing a robust data masking or redaction strategy for sensitive PII within call recordings. This aligns with the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, core tenets of data privacy regulations such as GDPR, if applicable to the jurisdiction, or similar U.S.-based privacy laws like CCPA. By masking or redacting PII, the organization can still analyze call content for quality assurance, agent coaching, and process improvement without exposing sensitive customer data. This demonstrates a commitment to customer privacy and regulatory adherence, representing best professional practice. It ensures that the benefits of call recording analysis are realized without compromising legal and ethical responsibilities. Incorrect approaches analysis. Failing to implement any form of PII protection in call recordings is a direct violation of data privacy regulations. This approach exposes the organization to significant legal risks, including hefty fines and potential lawsuits, and constitutes a severe ethical failure by disregarding customer privacy rights. Implementing a blanket policy of not recording calls at all, while seemingly protective, is also an incorrect approach in this context. Fails to leverage the UCCX system's capabilities for quality assurance and performance improvement, which are legitimate business needs. Furthermore, it might indirectly violate other regulatory requirements that mandate certain levels of service quality or auditability, which are often supported by call recordings. This approach is overly restrictive and does not represent a balanced solution. Implementing PII protection only for specific high-risk call types without a comprehensive strategy is insufficient. Data privacy regulations typically apply broadly, and failing to protect PII across all relevant recordings leaves the organization vulnerable to breaches and noncompliance. This approach demonstrates a lack of thoroughness and a reactive rather than proactive stance on data privacy. Professional reasoning. Professionals implementing UCCX must adopt a risk-based approach to data privacy. This involves identifying all types of sensitive data that might be captured, understanding the relevant regulatory requirements for their jurisdiction, and implementing technical and procedural controls to ensure compliance. A key decision-making framework involves 1. Data identification, cataloging all PII and sensitive data within call recordings. 2. Regulatory assessment, determining applicable data privacy laws and their specific requirements. 3. Control implementation, selecting and deploying appropriate technical solutions, e.g., redaction, masking, and operational procedures. 4. Continuous monitoring, regularly reviewing and updating privacy controls to adapt to evolving regulations and business needs. This systematic process ensures that business objectives are met while upholding legal and ethical obligations. Question 19. To address the challenge of validating a new Unified Communications Contact Center Express UCCX implementation with sensitive customer data, which approach best balances operational requirements with data privacy and security mandates? Option A. Request explicit, granular consent from every customer whose data might be used in any form during the testing process. Option B. Utilize anonymized or synthetic data sets that mimic the structure and volume of live customer data for all testing and validation phases. Option C. Defer the implementation of robust data security and privacy controls until after the UCCX system has been fully deployed and is operational. Option D. Employ a representative subset of actual live customer data for testing, ensuring it is accessible only to a limited, authorized technical team. The correct answer is B. Utilize anonymized or synthetic data sets that mimic the structure and volume of live customer data for all testing and validation phases. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge in implementing a UCCX solution by requiring a decision on how to handle sensitive customer data during a system migration. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need for efficient data transfer and system validation with the paramount importance of customer privacy and data security, especially in the context of regulatory compliance. Careful judgment is required to select an approach that minimizes risk while achieving project objectives. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes data minimization and anonymization during the testing phase. By using anonymized or synthetic data for validation, the implementation team adheres to the principle of least privilege and reduces the attack surface for potential data breaches. This aligns with the spirit of data protection regulations, which mandate that personal data should only be processed for specific, legitimate purposes, and that appropriate safeguards must be in place. Using anonymized data for testing ensures that no actual customer information is exposed to potential vulnerabilities during the development and validation lifecycle, thereby upholding customer trust and regulatory compliance. An incorrect approach that involves using a subset of live customer data without proper anonymization or masking for testing purposes poses significant regulatory and ethical failures. This directly violates data privacy principles by exposing real customer information to an environment that may not have the same stringent security controls as the production system. Such an action could lead to a data breach, resulting in severe penalties under data protection laws, reputational damage, and loss of customer confidence. Ethically, it demonstrates a disregard for the customer's right to privacy and security. Another incorrect approach, which involves delaying the implementation of security controls until after the system is live, is also professionally unacceptable. This represents a failure to proactively manage risk. Regulatory frameworks often require security measures to be implemented by design and by default. Postponing security implementation leaves the system vulnerable during its initial operational phase, increasing the likelihood of a security incident. This approach is reactive rather than proactive and demonstrates a lack of due diligence in protecting sensitive customer data from the outset. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a risk-based assessment. First, identify all potential data handling scenarios during the implementation. Second, evaluate the sensitivity of the data involved and the potential impact of a breach. Third, consult relevant regulatory requirements and internal data protection policies. Fourth, explore and prioritize solutions that minimize data exposure, such as anonymization, pseudonymization, or the use of synthetic data for testing. Finally, document the chosen approach and the rationale behind it, ensuring transparency and accountability. Question 20. Market research demonstrates that businesses are increasingly seeking real-time customer sentiment analysis to improve agent performance and customer satisfaction. A client implementing Cisco UCCX has requested a solution to capture and analyze customer sentiment directly within the contact center during live calls, aiming to provide immediate feedback to agents. What is the most professional and effective approach to address this requirement? Option A. Immediately develop a complex custom script within UCCX to capture and analyze audio snippets for sentiment in real time, prioritizing the client's direct request. Option B. Implement a solution that records all agent customer conversations and flags keywords associated with negative sentiment, without further analysis or consideration of data privacy. Option C. Advise the client that real-time sentiment analysis is not a supported feature of UCCX and decline the request. Option D. Investigate integrating UCCX with a specialized, compliant third-party sentiment analysis platform, or leverage UCCX reporting to derive aggregated sentiment insights, while educating the client on the complexities and potential regulatory considerations of real-time in-call sentiment analysis. The correct answer is D. Investigate integrating UCCX with a specialized, compliant third-party sentiment analysis platform, or leverage UCCX reporting to derive aggregated sentiment insights, while educating the client on the complexities and potential regulatory considerations of real-time in-call sentiment analysis. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge where a client's perceived need for a feature conflicts with the practical limitations and potential regulatory implications of its implementation within UCCX. The challenge lies in balancing client expectations with technical feasibility, cost-effectiveness, and adherence to data privacy regulations. The professional must navigate this by understanding the underlying business requirement, not just the requested solution, and by educating the client on alternatives and their implications. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves understanding the client's core business need behind the request for real-time customer sentiment analysis. Instead of directly implementing a potentially complex and resource-intensive UCCX native solution, the professional investigates alternative, more appropriate methods. This might involve integrating UCCX with a specialized third-party analytics platform or leveraging existing reporting capabilities to derive insights. This approach is best professional practice because it prioritizes a robust, scalable, and compliant solution that meets the business objective without over-engineering or introducing unnecessary risks. It demonstrates a commitment to understanding the why behind the request and providing the most effective solution. From a regulatory perspective, especially concerning data privacy, e.g., GDPR if applicable to the jurisdiction, though not explicitly stated for this exam, the principle of data minimization and purpose limitation is universal. Directly capturing and processing sentiment in real time within UCCX without a clear, defined, and compliant purpose could raise concerns. Focusing on aggregated insights or using specialized, compliant tools is often a safer and more effective regulatory posture. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach would be to immediately dismiss the client's request without exploring the underlying business need or potential alternatives. This demonstrates a lack of client engagement and problem-solving skills, potentially leading to client dissatisfaction and a missed opportunity to provide a valuable solution. Ethically, it fails to act in the client's best interest. Another incorrect approach would be to attempt a custom, complex scripting solution within UCCX to capture and analyze sentiment in real time, without fully understanding the performance, scalability, and data privacy implications. This could lead to system instability, performance degradation, and potential breaches of data privacy regulations if sensitive information is mishandled or stored inappropriately. It prioritizes a direct, but potentially flawed, implementation over a well-considered, compliant, and effective solution. A third incorrect approach would be to implement a solution that captures excessive personal data for sentiment analysis without a clear business justification or proper consent mechanisms. This directly violates data privacy principles and could expose the organization to significant legal and reputational damage. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a consultative approach. First, thoroughly understand the client's business objectives and the why behind their requests. Second, assess the technical feasibility and resource implications of proposed solutions within the given platform UCCX. Third, consider regulatory and compliance requirements relevant to the data being handled. Fourth, explore alternative solutions, including integrations with specialized tools or leveraging existing functionalities that best meet the business need while adhering to best practices and regulations. Finally, clearly communicate the rationale behind the recommended approach to the client, managing expectations and ensuring alignment.